All right, let's talk about initiation. So when we think about initiation traditionally, we think about, well, initiation, the act of going in as a hero, as far as Dota is concerned anyway. So what is initiation? To most people, it's pretty much just like Tide jumping in, pressing Alt, Void doing a Chronosphere, stuff like that. I firmly believe initiation can be done in a lot of different ways and on a lot of different heroes. Just because, Tide is seen as like this initiator doesn't mean like it's the only way you can initiate into a fight. Initiation can be done in many ways, like I said, where you can have something like, for example, Techies is very popular right now. Now, why is Techies popular? I was about to say, yeah, it's not that bombastic, but that isn't exactly true, is it? It's almost kind of like as bombastic as it could get. He actually like literally jumps in, explodes, and just initiates and stuns people. So is that what initiation is? Is it just a hero jumping into another row of heroes like the enemy and landing a stun and stunning people? Well, I suppose in a sense that is what initiation means. To me, it's more like it's another way of just referring to engagement, and that's where I mean like engagement can be done in many different ways. For an example, you can have an Earth Spirit that just rolls into the enemy, lands one hero and engages. That's still an initiation, right? Like that's what you do. He initiates the fight. So at its core, I think initiation is just whoever goes in first, who instigates the fight, yeah? And that's important because you kind of have to do that no matter what. No matter how your lineup looks like in Dota, you have to initiate in one way or another. And you could say, well, we don't have any hero that's done, we don't have any good initiator. You still have to do it one way or another. And there are lineups, for example, like if we say you have Underlord, Necro, Crystal Maiden, Vengeful, and Undying, right? Like let's just say you have a lineup like that. You don't really have like anyone that jumps in and starts things. Like you don't have a Tide, like I mentioned. You don't have like an Earthshaker with a Blink Dagger. That doesn't mean you can't initiate. It's just, you just have to basically walk into the enemy. Which comes all the way back to like the strategy of deathballing, for an example. Deathballing is just people getting ahead so much and then balling up with aura items so you can't kill them. Technically, they're just a ball that moves forward and forward, and you're forced to engage with them. So in a very roundabout way, they are actually initiating you, because like at some point that ball has taken all your tier 2 towers and now they're coming for your tier 3 tower. That's basically an initiation on their part. Whether or not like it's a Tide jumping in or an Underlord that goes up and slaps your fucking tier 3 silly, you have to go deal with that, right? So by method of them playing like that, that is an initiation. And I think that's important because I feel like people can very easily enter this stage of Dota where it's like, oh no, we don't have an initiator, we're done. Like, oh, the game's over. Offlane picked weird hero, we lose. And granted, as someone that has played a lot of offlane, I mostly play carry nowadays, I am not a huge fan when I see a hero on offlane that clearly people want to play as a carry, but it really depends how they carry it, for an example. No pun intended there. So Windranger, really good hero, really good carry, or she was. I think now she's decent. She's not broken anymore, at least. She's viable. And she can sort of like semi-initiate, really. She has Shackle that's really good. When I see a Windranger, I get a bit scared. And I don't get scared and go like, oh god, I don't have an initiator now. That's not it. I get scared because he might not initiate. He might not make it his priority. And that's something else. That's something scary, that the person might not play the hero in a way that benefits him playing position 3. And I think this is where like a lot of potential misunderstanding comes from. It's more like people will pick non-meta position 3 heroes and then play them incorrectly. So for example, you'll see a lot of people, either they don't like 3, they're token 3, like, they just happen to get offlane, and they'll pick some semi-carry hero on offlane, and they'll just run around and farm. Whether it's Tide or Windranger, Spirit Breakers. I've had Spirit Breakers that do nothing but they rush Axe just so they can farm more and then they never engage in fights. It's entirely possible. And let's be real, Spirit Breaker can initiate. He can initiate really, really good. He's actually very, very top tier right now. Even after the nerf, he's still freaking good. So all of this initiating really is, it's every hero can really do it, right? Like there's pretty much almost no hero that really can't do it. It's just that some heroes are better at doing it. And the traditional sense of initiating is very much like, the axe pounds, the Tide jump, stuff like that, where, it's like this bombastic engagement. But every hero can really kind of do it. And that's important because initiating is a large part of winning the game in one fashion or another, because when you're ahead, how do you get further ahead? Well, you initiate upon the enemy, you gank them, and that's usually done by you getting the jump on them, which is by method of being engaged upon, so that's an initiation in one fashion or another, yeah? How do you get back in a game? You usually have to initiate in one fashion or another. Now, whether or not you have heroes that are good at that or not, that's up to the lineup that you happen to be on, really, right? But you have to make do with what you do have, really, because it's the only way you can get back in the game. So that's why it's so important to, for example, buy a smoke, so you can then get the jump and then engage on the enemy. And usually, yeah, like stuns is what allows initiation to happen the best. Traditionally speaking, it is these big initiators that are the most commonly seen as being able to do it, but the reality is all of these heroes can kind of do it to a certain extent, and every hero, when built correctly, can also tank. It doesn't mean they should, but it means they're able to do. And you can win multiple games just by understanding when you can engage the enemy and knowing it will cost your life, but it will win you the fight. And that's almost a whole different like subject altogether, and then just initiating. That's just understanding to create space. Let me put it like this for an example. Let's just say happenstance that I'm playing Crystal Maiden, right? And I have a Wind Ranger offlane. I'm position 5 Crystal Maiden. And our Wind Ranger is not an initiator because he wants to run around and farm creeps. And he does show up to fights, he just shows up way too late. I can still make it so these fights happen, and I basically can like soften the fight for him to be able to finish up the fight because they used everything. So because I'm so tanky and I have Guardian Greaves from CM, I can intentionally make the enemy use the majority of their abilities and attention to kill me, knowing that now they can't kill the rest of my team. Yeah, it sucks that I'm dying. Nobody likes to die in Dota, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as I win the fight and it wins me the game, I couldn't care less, right? Like, we can all agree that at the end of the day, we are playing Dota for that sweet 30 MMR, or, you know, have fun, whatever. But if we're playing ranked, I think most people would prefer to win, yeah? I know I would. That actually comes all the way back to something I also wanted to mention with DotA, where there was actually recently an interview with him where he was actually kind of getting a little bit of flack for some people were calling him not that great of a carry compared to his contemporaries because his stats weren't looking too well. And he said something I actually think is really cool, and I think it's honestly something a lot of other people should adopt. Now, DotA is a carry, but he tends to be very forward, and if you watched Pro Dota recently, he is very, very happy to initiate as carries, Faceless Void, Terrorblade, these kind of heroes. He will initiate fights. He is not afraid of being the guy that gets fight started. But he basically said, I don't care if I end up with 0-20, so he dies 20 times and gets 0 kills. As long as he does his 20% and he wins the game for his team, then he is squared off. And I agree with this. I think that's very, very smart. If your win condition as a carry, as a support, as anyone, is that you have to engage, and that engagement, like that initiation, will get you killed, then so be it. It's not nice, but at the end of the day, we can only do what we can do, and it's better to get stuff started and get that ball rolling than not. So, there you have it.